Well, the next real game that I'm working on is taking longer than I thought, so who wants to kill some time with some Wii Shovelware? I also sliced my thumb open, and it is something that I can play with one hand.
Yes, we're taking a dip into the nice warm security blanket of this channel with Chicken Blaster. It took me 3 days from start to finish to make the video, and probably took the developers even less time than that. Chicken Blaster loads on a super cheap clip art looking title screen of a derpy chicken fading in and out like a ghost while a farmer naps and dribbles snot into his mouth. Not gonna lie, that bugs the shit out of me. Let's check the options menu first. Nothing but music volume and sound effects volume, always a good sign. There's no back button. Guys, how do I go back to the main menu? There's no button. I really don't want to have to trigger the credits. Oh, it's Z. The trigger button on the nunchuck of all the stupid buttons. The game has 8 levels, and the menus are laid out to make it look like each level is broken into subsections. They are not. They just make you select your level twice. So then the game starts, and whoa, they do not ease you into this, do they? Loads into a big-ass cloud of flying chickens in your face going full bonsai right away. Your default weapon is a 6-shooter pistol that somehow carries 15 shots before needing to reload, so you start blasting away at the chickens and barely even need to aim at them. It really is just button mashing. Boy, there sure are a lot of chickens on this screen, aren't there? And they just keep phasing into existence out of thin air. Couldn't even be bothered to have them spawn from behind walls or descend from the sky, huh? Guys, are you ever going to run out of enemies? How freaking long is this level? Well, you can sit here massacring chickens all damn day, this screen won't end and the chickens won't stop respawning. You're supposed to notice a tiny little number at the bottom of the screen for how many chickens you need to kill, and when it's over you press up on the control stick to advance to the next screen, with maybe 6 to 8 screens per level. This feels like astoundingly lazy design, especially since arcade shooters are not necessarily a new genre, let alone that's foreign to the Wii. You've got a great arcade shooter like Transformers Cybertron Adventures, where there's pacing, atmosphere, loads of carefully laid out enemy encounters, dynamic and exciting presentation, a story giving context to what in the hell you're doing, real variety to the weapons and hazards, urgency to enemy encounters, at least some degree of skill, and then you've got Chicken Blaster haphazardly dumping random new enemies onto a black screen wherever they'll fit, and the screen doesn't even end on its own because that would take some shred of actual game design. So yeah, this is the entire game. A bunch of chicken models spawn off in the distance and fly in giant circles, and you shoot them. There's no tactics or strategy or need to prioritize targets. You just point at the cloud of birds and button mash until everything's dead. The chickens throw eggs at you with no actual throwing animation. The eggs just materialize flying at your head, and you can dodge them by scrolling the camera side to side, or you can shoot them for extra health. Eggs will often hit you from completely out of nowhere, be thrown from off-screen, materialize so close to your face that you have no chance to react, or be thrown at and hit you while you're still transitioning between screens and less able to defend yourself, like here where I get hit 3 times at once out of nowhere. Or hell, the projectiles are so lazily programmed that they can spawn in mid-air with absolutely no enemy there to actually shoot at you. There are no special enemies in the game either. Every chicken is just a basic model with a 1-second looping animation that just flies back and forth in aimless circles, maybe eventually every now and then being bothered to chuck an egg at you. Real fast-paced and intense arcade shooter, ain't it? When the enemies barely even notice that you're there? You can shoot crates open for items, and even the item crates look cheap since you blow it open, the box is empty, and then the item phases out of the floor, and you get it. You did spend more than 1 day making this game, right? You couldn't get an item inside a box to render or animate properly? You get a few additional weapons. The shotgun gives you good spread fire, the grenade and rocket both nuke the screen. Not really sure why this had to be two separate items. The best weapon is the machine gun, where you squeeze the trigger, spray at a group, and it carves all the chickens into nuggets instantaneously. And the worst weapon is the laser, that fires a thick beam where you're not entirely sure how much it actually hits, and it takes forever and a half to load another shot. Although sometimes the game will have crates that are bulletproof for absolutely no reason. This forest level, I can see wooden boxes exactly like the item boxes, and they won't break open! Gimme! Papa wants more DACA! And it was while I was trying to shoot the earth apart opening this damn box that I realized, why aren't any of the enemies shooting at me? Seriously, I am sitting on my ass, exposed out in the open. There's no such thing as cover in this game. The chickens could not give a shit. They're just minding their own business. It turns out that a fairly high number of the enemies in this game don't make any attempt to hurt you. They just fly back and forth minding their own business, but you have to shoot them anyway to advance the stage. So 1, how do you fail this badly at making an arcade shooter? And 2, what kind of cold-hearted bastard are we, slaughtering peaceful chickens perfectly content to just leave us alone? It can't be for food, and it's not like we're defending our property. We chased these birds to the Arctic. We're just playing as a sick asshole! In case you couldn't tell from the Arctic stage, the selection of levels is weird. First level is a farm, second level is inside a barn, oh, fair enough. The third level is a Wild West town. Did we time travel or something? The dense lore of Chicken Blaster is beyond my comprehension. Level 6 is a haunted house where presumably the ghosts of your victims roam the halls as super cheap 2D sprites constantly phasing through the walls. Damn you, it's not enough that you slaughtered all these chickens, but you can't even let them rest in peace? And no, the actual enemies are not ghost-themed, which might have been kinda cool. It's just the same 3 or 4 models that you've been shooting the entire game. And since the haunted house is made out of tight corridors that loads of enemies have to squeeze into, all the chickens basically pile into one part of the screen, and you have to aim even less than you did in the first place. Level 7 is a medieval castle, which I guess you could just be visiting in the modern day, makes a little bit more sense, until you get to the screen transition where your farmer levitates several feet off the ground to get to a balcony. Screw shooting chickens, I can fly! There are some parts of the environments that you can shoot to interact with, like breaking fences or shooting open a few windows. None of the environmental targets actually do anything, but a lot of the environments are static, and it feels arbitrary what you can screw with and what you can't. There are several places where you can find squirrels, but you can pump hot lead to the face for hours on end. The squirrels won't even flinch. Squirrel lives matter. Chicken lives, not so much. The only level that feels like it had any thought or actual effort put into it is the Wild West stage. The chickens use a lot of cover, there are tons of things you can interact with, and the enemies seem to have actual patterns that kind of make them a challenge rather than all just dumping into one big pile, especially with a big battle sort of being at the end. So of course the one level that actually has some thought to its design and actual difficulty is stage 3 out of 8. The game has bosses, or rather, one boss with 4 skins, because every boss in the game has the exact same lack of behavior. They float left and right, you shoot some of their eggs out of the air to deplete a shield that I guess they have, and then a glowing red dot is just cheaply pasted over the screen to mark the boss's weak point because they couldn't even be bothered to design character models with a clear weakness. They also couldn't be bothered to animate the boss actually throwing its eggs at you. Projectiles continue to materialize out of nowhere. They also couldn't be bothered to animate the bosses, period! 3 out of 4 are just a static, unmoving model that floats back and forth. The first boss is even a T-pose! And literally the only idea they had to add challenge to the later stages is to have the bosses turn invisible every now and then. Not that it matters, they still barely fight you. They just list lazily to the left like they want as much to do with this game as I do. I had some weird glitches come out of this thing too. Repeatedly in mid-game, it would just fail to register that my nunchuck was plugged in, swapping the controls for reloading and switching weapons at random. And no, my damn controllers are not broken, wise ass, because I switched over to Transformers Cybertron Adventures to get that footage for earlier, and the nunchuck and zapper worked fine! There's also a calibration option in the menu to try and recenter the Wii Remote's pointer, which really baffles me because of all the Wii games that I've ever played, none have ever had or needed a calibration option for the pointer. It just isn't how the Wii works. and call it a hunch that Chicken Blaster isn't more advanced or technically savvy than Metroid Prime 3 to where it needs this crap. And when I tried the recalibration option out of curiosity, I aimed at the first marker in the corner of the screen, and all it did was bitch that my Wii cursor was off the screen. The screen that this thing is supposed to be redefining and adjusting in the first place. Call me crazy, but I'm not sure that this dev actually knew how to code for the Wii. The final level of the game is The Nest, which is, get this, a technologically advanced utopian city populated by chickens that fly UFOs! What? It's Asgard for poultry! Complete with chickens in wizard hats because... What? Where did this come from? Is this why the farmer has taken it upon himself to slaughter all the world's chickens? He found out that chickens have tech and weapons far beyond humans, feared that they'd take over the world, and is now committing genocide as a preemptive strike out of fear for the safety of mankind? Or given how many chickens just flat-ass don't attack you, are the chickens a peaceful species and the farmer's wrath instead comes out of indignation, rage, and jealousy at finding out that mankind isn't the dominant species on the planet and is wiping out a beautiful civilization out of pride and hubris? Damn chickens think you're better than me with your gold city and your flying saucers and your snot that doesn't dribble into your mouth. I'll put you in your place. I am the storm that is approaching, mother cluckers! This game got friggin' dark, man. And the last 2 games I've reviewed have been about cyberpunk dystopian futures. Oh, and once you kill the final boss, another static model of a derpy chicken in a UFO, the game just cuts off. You finished the fantastic story! What story? You just plunked me down in front of some chickens and said rip and tear until it is done. Even games with fantastic stories don't brag about it in-game, you putz! The campaign takes just barely north of 30 minutes to finish, by the way, and I don't think that this was a discounted budget title. Even Ninja Bread Man and its deformed clone brothers sold for cheaper and lasted longer than that! There are 3 gameplay modes, with career being the main campaign. Survival mode is literally just career mode again, only you get 1 life instead of 3, and I hardly ever came close to dying, so that mode is a complete waste of time. You'd think that a survival mode would at least challenge you to beat the whole campaign in one go, versus stopping and calling it a day after 1 friggin' stage. The only other mode is Quest, where each level has 5 objectives that you can optionally complete one at a time so as to pad this thing out to something reasonable. Except the quests are crap too. Dodge or shoot eggs by just sliding back and forth on the first screen over and over, beat the whole level with the pistol, which is extremely easy to do, beat the stage in a time limit that's near impossible. You get the idea, and the bulk of them are just busy work. There's no indication whatsoever that actually doing these quests unlocks anything. They only exist to repel the buyer's remorse at the full price game that you finished in 40 minutes. Chicken Blaster is not an infuriating or painful game to play, but it does still get boring even before its piddly length is up, and it doesn't waste much of your time, but just the sheer laziness on display is astounding. No story, no context, just take a few cheap environments, slap 4 endlessly spawning cheap models in them, barely add any enemy AI to speak of so that most of the foes float in circles ignoring you, and they couldn't even keep this rock bottom level of effort going for longer than 40 minutes. Just throw it up on shelves to capitalize on the popularity of the Wii Zapper, to the point that the game brings up prompts just assuming that you're using the Zapper anytime the nunchuck is plugged in. This is the kind of phoned-in garbage that Steam Direct would be envious of, and given the butt-fugly art styles that barely seem to match up with each other, it wouldn't surprise me if this were made of stock assets like a modern Steam hack job. All in all, another sterling example of shovelware dragging down the Wii's reputation. More egg on the console's face. You see what I did there with the egg pun, because they throw eggs at you? Hey, I already put more effort into this video than was probably put into the game. Cut me a break.